Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories today. I bring you a powerful and deeply loving story asterisk. The morning Chicago rain hammered against the window of Olivia Torres's tiny studio apartment as she stared at the email that would change her life. The subject line read, "Urgent, high-paying contract opportunity." She had opened it expecting another scam, but the letterhead from Blackwood Enterprises was legitimate. She had checked 3 times. Olivia wrapped her worn cardigan tighter around herself and reread the message. Someone needed an event planner for a 3-week honeymoon in the Maldives. The pay was $30,000. Her entire annual salary at Chicago Premier Events, where she spent her days coordinating birthday parties for spoiled teenagers and retirement dinners for people who barely noticed her existence. Her phone buzzed. It was her younger sister, Hannah, texting from the hospital, where she was receiving treatment for lupus. The medical bills were drowning their small family. Their mother worked 2 jobs just to keep their heads above water. Olivia had been skipping meals to send extra money home. She typed a response to the email before she could talk. Herself out of it 2 days later. Olivia found herself in a glass tower overlooking Lake Michigan, riding an elevator to the 45th floor. Her interview outfit, a navy blazer she had borrowed from her roommate, and pants she had owned since college, felt inadequate as the elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area that looked like it belonged in an art museum. A woman in an expensive suit led her through corridors lined with abstract paintings until they reached a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. The view stretched across the city, making Olivia feel dizzy and small. Behind a massive desk sat a man who looked nothing like the corporate mogul she had imagined. Julian Blackwood was perhaps 35, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and there was something tired in his expression that made him seem more human than his surroundings suggested. "Miss Torres," he said, standing to shake her hand. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Blackwood. Julian, please." He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. "I assume the nature of this position was explained in the email." Olivia sat carefully, trying not to think about how much the chair probably cost. "Event coordination during your honeymoon." The details were somewhat limited. Julian leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her fidget with her portfolio. "How much do you know about my company?" "Blackwood Enterprises specializes in technology infrastructure. You develop the software that most major airlines use for their booking systems. You started the company when you were 23 and built it into a billion-dollar operation in less than a decade." Ow. A faint smile crossed his face. "You did your research. I always do." "Then you probably also know that I recently married Natasha Sterling, daughter of Richard Sterling, who owns Sterling Global Investments." Olivia nodded. The wedding had been in all the society pages. The merger of 2 powerful families is creating an empire that would dominate both tech and finance. Julian stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "My marriage is not what it appears to be, Miss Torres. It's a business arrangement. Natasha and I have an understanding that allows us both certain freedoms." Olivia's heart rate picked up. She had heard of such arrangements, but never expected to be discussing one. "Natasha will be accompanied by her personal trainer, Devin Grant, during our honeymoon. They have a relationship that extends beyond professional boundaries. I need someone to help coordinate activities and events that will keep up appearances while allowing everyone involved to maintain their privacy." And she saw something vulnerable in his expression. "I need someone discreet, professional, and most importantly, someone who won't judge the situation." Olivia thought about Hannah in the hospital bed, about her mother's exhausted face after working double shifts, about the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter. "I understand business arrangements, Mr. Blackwood. I'm not here to judge anyone's personal choices." "Julian," he corrected softly. "And may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why do you need this job so desperately?" "Your resume shows you're talented. You could work anywhere." The directness of the question caught her off guard. She considered lying, crafting some professional answer about career growth and opportunity. Instead, she found herself telling the truth. My sister has lupus. The treatments are expensive. My mother works herself to exhaustion trying to keep up with the bills. I send home everything I can spare, but it's never enough. $30,000 would cover Hannah's treatments for the next 6 months and give my mother a chance to breathe. Julian's expression softened. I'm sorry about your sister. Thank you. He returned to his desk, pulling out a contract. The job is yours if you want it. We leave in 3 days. You'll have your own villa at the resort. Your responsibilities will include coordinating dinners, excursions, and any events that Natasha requests. You'll also need to be available for any business meetings I schedule. The pay is $30,000, plus all expenses. Olivia's hands shook slightly as she reached for the contract. When you say all expenses, everything. Travel, accommodations, meals, appropriate clothing for events. I need you to look the part of a professional coordinator for a high-profile honeymoon. 3 days later, Olivia stood in O'Hare International Airport with a new suitcase full of clothes that cost more than her monthly rent. Julian had sent a personal shopper to her apartment with instructions to ensure she had everything she needed. The experience had been surreal. Now she was about to board a private jet for the first time in her life. Julian was already on the plane, working on his laptop in one of the leather seats. He looked up when she entered, offering a brief nod of greeting. A flight attendant took her bag and showed her to a seat across from him. Natasha and Devin will meet us at the resort, Julian explained without looking up from his screen. They took an earlier commercial flight. Natasha wanted to shop in Dubai first. Olivia settled into her seat, trying not to gawk at the luxury surrounding her. The plane had actual bedrooms in the back. There was a full bar and a dining area. It was larger than her apartment. As the plane took off, Olivia watched Chicago shrink below them. She was leaving behind everything familiar, stepping into a world she barely understood. The city lights twinkled like stars scattered across black velvet, and she felt a strange mix of excitement and terror. Nervous? Julian asked, finally closing his laptop. About flying? No, about everything else. Terrified. He smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warmer. At least you're honest. Most people in your position would pretend confidence they don't feel. I've never been good at pretending. That's refreshing. Julian poured himself a drink from the bar. Would you like something? Water is fine. He brought her a glass, and their fingers brushed briefly as she took it. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, which she immediately pushed away. This was a job, nothing more. Can I ask you something? Olivia said after a moment of silence. Of course. Why go through with the marriage if it makes you this unhappy? Julian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally he spoke, his voice low. Because sometimes duty matters more than happiness. My father built this company from nothing. When he died 2 years ago, it became my responsibility to protect what he created. The merger with Sterling Global secures our future for the next 50 years. That's worth more than my personal comfort. But is it worth your happiness? He looked at her with those storm cloud eyes, and she saw depths of loneliness she recognized from her own mirror. I stopped thinking about happiness a long time ago, Miss Torres. Now, I focus on responsibility, Olivia, she said softly. If I'm going to call you Julian, you should call me Olivia. The flight attendant appeared to announce that dinner was ready. They ate in comfortable silence, and Olivia noticed that Julian seemed to relax slightly as the miles stretched between them and Chicago. Somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, as Olivia stared out at the darkness below, she realized that this journey was going to be far more complicated than she had anticipated. There was something about Julian Blackwood that called to the broken, hopeful parts of her heart that she had carefully locked away after too many disappointments. She told herself to remember why she was here, to keep her distance. But as she glanced across the cabin and found Julian watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, Olivia knew that keeping her distance was going to be the hardest job she had ever undertaken. The plane carried them through the night toward paradise, toward secrets that would unravel, and toward a connection neither of them was prepared to face. The adventure was just beginning. The Maldives resort emerged from the turquoise water like a dream made solid. Overwater villas stretched along wooden walkways that disappeared into the horizon, each one a private sanctuary of glass and tick. The air smelled of salt and frangipani. The sun painted everything in shades of gold and azure. Olivia stood on the dock, overwhelmed by the beauty surrounding her. She had seen pictures, of course, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The water was so clear she could see tropical fish swimming beneath her feet. The sky stretched endlessly above, unmarred by clouds or pollution. "Your villa is at the end of the east walkway," Julian said, appearing beside her with their luggage being wheeled behind by resort staff. "You'll have complete privacy. My villa is on the opposite side of the resort." Before Olivia could respond, a voice called out from one of the central villas. "Julian, darling, you finally made it." Natasha Sterling Blackwood emerged onto her private deck like a magazine cover come to life. She wore a white bikini that showed off her perfect figure and oversized sunglasses that probably cost more than Olivia's car. Her platinum blonde hair fell in beachy waves, and her skin had already achieved a golden tan. Behind her, a man stepped out who could only be Devin Grant. He was tall and muscular, with the kind of body that came from dedicated hours in the gym. His swim trunks hung low on his hips, and he wore a confident smile that suggested he knew exactly how good he looked. "Natasha," Julian said with polite coolness, "I see you've settled in. Oh, completely. This place is perfect for content. I've already posted 6 stories and 3 reels. My engagement is through the roof." Natasha finally seemed to notice Olivia. "And you must be the event planner." "Olivia, wasn't it?" "Yes. Nice to meet you properly, Mrs. Blackwood." "God, call me Natasha. Mrs. Blackwood makes me feel ancient." She waved a dismissive hand. "This is Devin, my trainer. He keeps me in shape." Devin's grin widened. Among other things, the comment hung in the air, brazen and unapologetic. Julian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Olivia felt a wave of secondhand embarrassment for him. "Well," Julian said evenly, "I'll let you get back to your content creation. Olivia and I have some planning to discuss." As they walked away toward Olivia's villa, she could hear Natasha laughing, the sound carrying across the water like broken glass. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," Julian said once they were out of earshot. "You don't need to apologize to me. Still, it's humiliating." They reached Olivia's villa, and she gasped despite herself. Floor 2 ceiling windows overlooked the ocean. King-size bed draped in white linens dominated the main room, and a private infinity pool seemed to spill directly into the sea. It was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. "The resort manager will bring you a schedule of activities available," Julian said, standing awkwardly at the doorway. "Tomorrow, we can start planning the week's events. For now, rest." "You've had a long journey, Julian." "Wait." Olivia turned to face him. "Are you going to be okay?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. His professional mask slipped, revealing raw pain underneath. "I've learned to be okay with a lot of things, Olivia. This is just one more." After he left, Olivia unpacked and tried to process everything. She called Hannah, who squealed with excitement when she heard about the resort. She called her mother, who cried with relief when Olivia confirmed the payment had already been deposited. Then she sat on her deck, watching the sun set over the Indian Ocean, tried not to think about the loneliness in Julian's eyes. The next morning, Olivia woke to a knock on her door. A resort staff member delivered breakfast and a note from Julian asking her to meet him at the Marine Biology Center. At 10 o'clock, the center was a modern facility at the resort's edge, dedicated to coral reef conservation. Olivia found Julian inside, surrounded by aquariums and research equipment, talking animatedly with a marine biologist about reef restoration projects. "Olivia," he said when he noticed her, and his whole face lit up in a way she hadn't seen before. "Come look at this." For the next hour, she watched a different Julian emerge. He explained coral bleaching, discussed conservation strategies, and showed genuine passion for protecting the ocean ecosystem. His hands moved expressively as he talked, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "I didn't know you were interested in marine conservation," Olivia said when they finally left the center. "More than interest, it's what I actually care about." Julian led her along a beach path away from the main resort. The tech company was my father's dream. This is mine. Why don't you pursue it? Because dreams don't pay for billion-dollar companies or satisfy board members or fulfill family legacies. He stopped walking, turning to face the ocean. But here, away from everything, I can pretend for a little while that my life is different. Olivia felt something shift in her chest. She recognized that feeling, the weight of responsibility crushing the life out of your actual desires. She carried it every day for Hannah and her mother. "What would you do if you could choose anything?" she asked softly. Julian was quiet for a long moment, waves lapping at their feet. "I'd sell the company. Use the money to fund real conservation work. Maybe start a foundation dedicated to ocean protection. Live somewhere simple, where I could wake up and spend my days doing something that actually matters. That's a beautiful dream. It's impossible. Why? Because I made promises to my father? Because hundreds of employees depend on the company? Because walking away would mean admitting that I'm selfish enough to choose my happiness over everyone else's security?" Olivia understood that burden. She had carried a version of it her entire adult life. "You're not selfish for wanting to be happy, Julian." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something passed between them that felt dangerous and inevitable. "When did you become so wise?" "When I learned that sacrificing yourself doesn't actually save anyone else." They walked back in comfortable silence, but something had changed. A connection had formed, fragile and undeniable. That evening, Olivia coordinated an elaborate beach dinner for the four of them. Lanterns hung from palm trees, a private chef prepared fresh seafood, and musicians played soft melodies as the sun disappeared into the ocean. Natasha and Devon arrived late, already tipsy from afternoon cocktails. They sat close together, touching constantly, whispering and laughing. Julian maintained his composed exterior, but Olivia saw the tension in his shoulders. The way his hands gripped his wine glass too tightly. "This is lovely," Natasha said, barely glancing at the setup. "Very romantic. Perfect for the photos I want to post tomorrow." "I'm glad you approve," Olivia replied, trying to keep her tone neutral. "You know what would make this even better?" Devon leaned back in his chair, skinny dipping. "The water looks incredible at night." Natasha giggled. "Oh my God. Yes. Let's do it." "I think I'll pass," Julian said coolly. "Of course you will," Natasha shot back. "You never want to have any fun." "I have a different definition of fun than splashing around naked while someone takes pictures for social media." The tension crackled like lightning about to strike. Olivia cleared her throat. "I can arrange a private boat excursion tomorrow if anyone is interested. There's excellent snorkeling at a nearby reef." "Snorkeling is boring," Devon said dismissively. "What about jet skiing? Parasailing? Something with actual adrenaline. I can arrange that too." Natasha stood abruptly. "This dinner is dead. Come on, Devon, let's find our own fun." They left, walking unsteadily down the beach. Olivia and Julian sat in awkward silence, the beautiful dinner suddenly feeling like a funeral. "I'm sorry," Olivia finally said. "Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault." Julian poured himself more wine. "This is my reality. I chose it. Did you, though? Or did circumstances choose it for you?" Julian looked at her across the candlelit table, and in his eyes she saw years of loneliness, this compromise of slow suffocation. "Does it matter?" "I think it matters very much." They talked until the candles burned low and the musicians packed up their instruments. They talked about dreams deferred and responsibilities accepted. They talked about the difference between existing and living. And with every word, the space between them seemed to shrink. "I should go," Olivia finally said, though she didn't want to. "It's late." Julian walked her back to her villa. The moon had risen, painting everything in silver light. At her door, he hesitated. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not the company, or the money, or the situation. Just me." Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. "Julian, I know," he interrupted gently. "I know this is complicated. I know I have no right to feel what I'm feeling. But sitting with you tonight, I remembered what it's like to want something just for myself. What do you want?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Something I can't have. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility and impossibility. Then Julian stepped back, creating distance that felt like miles. "Good night, Olivia. Good night." She watched him walk away, disappearing into the moonlit night, and knew that everything had changed. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was something far more dangerous, and she was falling into it with her eyes wide open. Over the next week, Olivia coordinated activities that kept everyone occupied. Natasha and Devin took yacht excursions and spent hours at beach clubs, creating content for Natasha's massive following. Julian attended virtual business meetings during the day but found excuses to spend evenings with Olivia. They went snorkeling together at the reef, swimming among schools of colorful fish. They took sunset walks on deserted beaches, talking about everything and nothing. They had midnight conversations on Olivia's deck, sharing stories from their pasts. Julian told her about his father's death, about the crushing weight of expectations, about the loneliness of success. Olivia told him about Hannah's diagnosis, about dropping out of her dream graduate program to help support her family, about learning to find joy in small moments. With each conversation, they grew closer. The professional boundaries blurred and dissolved. They began finishing each other's sentences, sharing private jokes, finding excuses to touch hands or shoulders. "This is dangerous," Olivia whispered one night, as they sat side by side watching bioluminescent plankton light up the water. "I know," Julian replied, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "You're married, in name only. A contract, not a marriage. It still matters, does it?" He turned to face her. "If I'm trapped in a cage, does it matter that the bars are made of legal documents instead of steel?" Olivia wanted to argue, to maintain the moral high ground, to protect herself. But sitting there with him, feeling more alive than she had in years, she found she couldn't. "What happens when this ends?" she asked instead. "When we go back to reality? I don't know. But for the first time in years, I'm thinking about possibilities instead of just obligations." The storm rolled in on their 17th day in paradise. The sky darkened to the color of bruises, and wind whipped the palm trees into a frenzy. The resort manager sent messages warning all guests to stay inside their villas until the tropical storm passed. Olivia watched from her windows as waves crashed higher and higher against the stilts supporting her villa. Rain hammered the glass like bullets, and thunder rolled across the water. There was something exhilarating and terrifying about being suspended over angry ocean during a storm. Her phone buzzed. "Julian, are you okay?" "Your villa is more exposed than mine." "I'm fine. It's actually beautiful in a terrifying way. I'm coming over." "Julian, the storm? I'm not leaving you alone if something happens." 10 minutes later, he arrived soaked to the skin despite the short distance between villas. Olivia pulled him inside, grabbed towels, and helped him dry off. "You're insane," she said. But she was smiling. Probably. He looked around her villa, noticing for the first time how she had personalized the space with photos of Hannah and her mother, books borrowed from the resort library, and sketches she had made of the reef. "You've made this place home. I make home wherever I am. It's a survival skill." They settled on the couch, watching the storm rage outside. The electricity flickered, but held. The villa swayed slightly, but the construction was solid. "Natasha and Devin are trapped in the main resort building," Julian said. "They were at the restaurant when the storm hit. Are they okay?" According to Natasha's Instagram stories, they're having a great time. Devin is teaching her to mix cocktails behind the bar. There was no bitterness in his voice anymore, just acceptance. Olivia squeezed his hand. "I made a decision," Julian said suddenly. "I'm filing for divorce." Olivia's heart stopped. "What?" "I talked to my lawyers this morning. The prenuptial agreement has a clause that allows either party to exit the marriage within the first year for any reason. I'm invoking it. Julian, the merger, the company, will survive, or it won't. Either way, I can't keep living this lie." He turned to face her fully. "Meeting you showed me what I've been missing. Not just romance or connection, but the possibility of being happy, of living a life that actually matters to me." Olivia felt tears building behind her eyes. What about your father's legacy? My father built that company because he wanted to create something meaningful. Somewhere along the way, the company became the meaning, instead of a tool to create it. I think he would understand that I need to find my own meaning. What will you do? Sell the company to someone who actually wants to run it. Use the money to start the conservation foundation I've been dreaming about. Maybe buy a small place near the ocean where I can wake up and do work that feeds my soul instead of draining it. The storm raged outside. But inside Olivia's villa, everything was suddenly calm and clear. Where do I fit in this plan? Olivia asked, her voice barely audible above the thunder. Julian cupped her face in his hands. Anywhere you want. I'm not asking you to save me or fix me or complete me. I'm just asking if you might want to build something together. To people who understand sacrifice, who know what it means to put others first, choosing to put each other first for once. I can't leave my family. Hannah needs me. No. Your mother and sister can come with us if that's what you need. Or we stay in Chicago near them. Or we split our time between places. We figure it out together. You would do that? Rearrange your entire life for me? Olivia, my entire life needs rearranging. You didn't cause that. You just helped me see it. But yes, I would do that for you. I would do a lot of things for you. The kiss that followed was inevitable. It was soft and desperate, tender and passionate, full of everything they had been holding back. Outside, lightning split the sky. Inside, two broken people found themselves becoming whole. They stayed wrapped in each other's arms as the storm passed, talking about futures that suddenly seemed possible. Julian called his lawyers from Olivia's villa and initiated divorce proceedings. Natasha, when informed later, was relieved rather than upset. Thank God, she said over speakerphone. Devin and I have been wanting to go public for months. The social media content we can create as an actual couple will be incredible. Plus, the divorce will get amazing engagement. I'm glad we could provide you with content opportunities, Julian said dryly. But he was smiling. The final days in the Maldives were different. Julian and Olivia stopped hiding their connection. They swam together in the morning, worked side by side during the day, and fell asleep in each other's arms at night. Natasha and Devin barely noticed, too caught up in their own relationship now that it could be public. On their last evening, Julian and Olivia returned to the Marine Biology Center. The scientists there had heard about Julian's plans for a conservation foundation and were eager to discuss potential partnerships. You're really doing this? Olivia said as they walked back to the villas. We're really doing this, Julian corrected. I want you to be part of it. Not as an employee or a planner, but as a partner. Your skills in coordination and your eye for sustainable design would be invaluable. I don't know anything about running a foundation. Neither do I. We'll learn together. Back in Chicago, Julian moved into a modest apartment while the divorce proceedings unfolded. The media frenzy was intense, but brief. Natasha and Devin became social media darlings, their love story generating millions of views. Julian stepped down as CEO of Blackwood Enterprises and sold the company to a consortium of investors. Olivia introduced Julian to Hannah and her mother. Hannah adored him immediately, especially when he arranged for her to receive treatment at a cutting-edge lupus clinic. Olivia's mother was more cautious, but she warmed up when she saw how Julian looked at her daughter. 6 months after the Maldives, the Blackwood Ocean Conservation Foundation officially launched. The office was small but efficient, located near the Chicago waterfront. Olivia designed the space with sustainability in mind. Using reclaimed materials and natural light, they spent their first year funding reef restoration projects, supporting marine biology research, and developing educational programs. Julian was happier than Olivia had ever seen him. He wore jeans and t-shirts instead of suits. He got his hands dirty on research vessels. He came home exhausted, but fulfilled. Olivia flourished too. She discovered a passion for nonprofit management and sustainable design. She coordinated events that raised millions for ocean conservation. She found purpose that went beyond survival. Hannah's health improved with better treatment. She started college, majoring in environmental science, inspired by Julian's work. Olivia's mother retired from one of her jobs, finally able to breathe. On the anniversary of that first night in the Maldives, Julian took Olivia back to the resort. They stayed in the same villa where everything had changed. "And I continue?" Julian whispered, echoing that first conversation in his office that felt like a lifetime ago. "Continue what?" Olivia smiled, knowing exactly what he meant. "Building this life with you. Choosing happiness. Creating meaning instead of just maintaining legacy." He pulled out a simple ring, elegant and understated. "Marry me. Not for business or obligation or any reason, except that I love you and want to spend my life choosing you every single day." Olivia looked at the man who had started as an assignment and became her everything. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, about the courage it took to choose happiness, about the beauty of building something real. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." They married on the beach 3 months later. Hannah was the maid of honor. Olivia's mother cried happy tears. The scientists from the Marine Biology Center attended, along with the resort staff who had witnessed their story unfold. Natasha sent a gift, an enormous tropical flower arrangement with a card that read, "Congratulations on your real honeymoon. Thanks for the divorce. My engagement numbers were incredible." We laughed about it on their actual honeymoon, sailing around conservation sites in the Pacific. They worked during the days and loved during the nights. They built something that mattered. Years later, when people asked Olivia how she ended up running a major conservation foundation and marrying a former billionaire, she always told them the truth. It started with a whisper on a honeymoon. That wasn't real and became something more authentic than either of them had imagined. It started with two people trapped by duty who found the courage to choose differently. It started with a question: "Can I continue?" And the answer, always and forever, was yes. The foundation grew. They had 2 children who learned to swim in coral reefs and fell asleep to stories about saving the ocean. Hannah became a marine biologist, joining their team. Olivia's mother moved into a cottage near their house, finally able to rest. Julian never regretted leaving his father's company. He built a different legacy, one that protected living things instead of accumulating wealth. And every morning when he woke up next to Olivia, he felt grateful that a tropical storm had trapped them together long enough to see what could be. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. Sometimes duty and desire don't have to be enemies. Sometimes a business arrangement transforms into real love. And sometimes when you whisper softly in the darkness, asking if you can continue, the universe answers with a resounding yes. You can continue. You can choose differently. You can build something beautiful from broken pieces. That was their story. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth it. Not the ending either of them expected, but the one they both deserved. In the end, they learned what happiness actually costs. It costs courage, honesty, the willingness to disappoint some people to save yourself. It costs comfort and certainty and the safety of familiar misery. But what it gives in return is everything. Purpose, partnership, peace. The chance to wake up and know that your life belongs to you, that your choices matter, that love is possible even in impossible circumstances. Julian and Olivia built that life together, one brave choice at a time. And when their children asked how they fell in love, they always started with the same words. It began with a whisper on a honeymoon with a millionaire. And the romance that followed changed everything. Thank you for taking Fed time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.